Interesting talks today, but none of them were related to testing, so I will be your manager and push testing towards you right now. Okay, a little about me. I am Ravi. I work as a Nightwatch.js core collaborator, and I work with awesome folks at BrowserStack. So it's going to be a short talk with lot of demos. So first, I'll go about why do we need component test? Why we as developers need to write component tests. I'll talk little about following testing principles. I'll share some discussions around using JS DOM, and at the end, I have an interesting demo of using your writing your component test against cloud providers. How you can take full advantage of cloud providers. Let's start with demo. So I'm going to use this sample demo website. So it's normal e-commerce website. What you can do is mark product as favorites, add them to cart, checkout. But for this talk, let's just focus on one feature, marking the product as favorites. So how do you go about testing it? So suppose we remove component testing, it's not there in the world. How do we do it in end-to-end test? Let's just focus on the first 8 block, ignore before block for a while. The real test lies over here. So what we do in the test is find the first element, click on it, and very important step, browser.pause. Important for the talk, not for you guys. It's not at all important. When you write test, throw it in garbage. And at the last step, I'm just checking that if product is marked as favorite by checking a class, that class is appended, the click class is appended. Let's see this in action. Okay, so for writing test, I'm using Nightwatch. So what it does, it's loading Chrome driver, navigates to the site, sign in as a user, marks the product as favorites, and runs one assertion. It passed, right? So what's the problem over here? So you see that before block, we need to sign in as a user before marking the product. We need to do that in end-to-end test. There will be problem when there are too many end-to-end tests and you are setting up an environment to test a feature every time. Imagine writing a feature in 2 hours and then it takes a day to publish it because of your testing pipeline. It takes a day to test all the existing features along with the new feature. So that's where component test comes into picture. So this test is written using Nightwatch. What I do is, you see these angular brackets over here. I'm mounting the component with the set of properties. So this export cons favorite product test is single test. And what it does, it mounts the component with properties. And then in the test, it expects the component to be visible. It's the same test, same end-to-end test, but this time we are not logging the user. We click on the favorite button, we wait. The wait is for you guys to show that it's actually working, and then at the end we are doing the same assert. Let's see this in action now. This is the same thing. It will load up the Chrome browser, but this time it will just mount the component. There's the component, there's the click happened, and everything passes. So some of the benefits of component testing. It is faster. We don't need to set up an environment before testing the feature actually. Because we are testing it in an isolated environment, it would be very less flaky. And if the failure occurs, it would be very easy to pinpoint where the failure is coming from. And you can test it as and when you write components. You don't need to wait for the end product. So what am I suggesting over here? So end-to-end tests are not at all good. We should throw them away, fire our QA folks, ask our managers to credit their salary to us. No, that's not what I am saying. We should follow the testing pyramid. So you see up top, we should limit UI tests to, not every feature should be tested by UI test. It should be limited. But most of the test suites these days look like this. It's not a testing pyramid, it's like a Christmas tree. One more thing, most of the frameworks uses JS DOM to provide component testing. And even I think this is taken from the React's website. It suggests that recommended tool is JS DOM. But if you noticed earlier in my component testing demo, I didn't use JS DOM. Why didn't I use JS DOM? For those of you who don't know what JS DOM, how many of you here uses JS DOM or know little about JS DOM? Or you, all right. So JS DOM, for those of you who don't know, it emulates browser APIs in Node.js environment. Let's see an example, what's the difference. So how many of you here write component test using Jest and JS DOM? Okay, plenty. So you might be familiar with this thing. It's a test written for product component in Jest and JS DOM. But what I've done over here is a CSS change. You see that favorite button is not at all visible. Let's see if it will be able to detect or not. So this time there is no browser rendering, just Node.js environment playing. Everything passes. Oops. But your customer doesn't use JS DOM, they use real browsers, I think. They won't be able to find that favorite button. So let's see an example with real browsers this time. This is using Nightwatch, same test with the CSS change. It won't load up the Chrome window because it's running in headless mode, but it is on real browser. It clearly displays an error that element is not interactable. So using JS DOM today would be like preferring cassette players over smartphone for streaming music. While it might be a good approximation, today we have better frameworks who provide component testing on real browsers. So JS DOM is not, like it might be a very close approximation, but there are multiple things like this I showed. There are more things. If you do CSS changes, like if your element is out of the window, it won't be able to detect. That's why in Nightwatch, we use real browsers. At last, I have a very interesting demo. So the test written and the component written is not hosted anywhere. It's in the local machine, but I'll be using a cloud provider to run my test on a mobile device. It's not a simulator, it's a real mobile device hosted on BrowserStack infrastructure. It loads up the browser window, it will mount the component, and the assertion passes. Thank you. This was my short talk about component testing. If you'd like to know more, you can scan the QR code.